What's up, everybody, and welcome to our Wednesday morning teaching video. If you tuned in Monday to our Mondays Are for Leaders leadership video, we hope you enjoyed that. If you did, maybe share it with someone that you know is also in a leadership position, or maybe if they just want to grow in their leadership, share those videos with them. I'll be posting those every single Monday evening at 6 o'clock during this time. And then obviously we have our Wednesday morning experience, and also we're looking forward to our Sunday morning online worship experience, living room worship. It's going to be cool. Today, just like we did last Wednesday, I want to continue to talk about our heart and our condition on the inside. I honestly think that probably going through this time right now, just from what I've seen online, there's probably a lot of people right now who are coming face to face with a lot of things on the inside of them that they need to deal with. So I thought for these Wednesday morning teaching videos, it'd be a great idea to maybe talk about our heart and the condition on the inside. So we continue with that today, and how to work through those issues and how to surrender our hearts to God so He can mold our heart. In the New Testament letter to the Romans, the missionary Paul says this about living a life that is honest. And so that's really what I want to talk to you about today, about living an honest life, a life of character, a life of integrity, and a life of honesty. So this is what Paul says in Romans chapter 12, verses 3 through 5, and today I'll be reading from the New Living Translation. The missionary Paul says this: "Because of the privilege and authority that God has given me, I give each of you this warning. Don't think that you're better than you really are." That's so key. He says this is a warning. Don't think that you're better than you really are. Be honest in your evaluation of yourselves. That's what we're talking about today, how to live an honest life and evaluate our heart. So Paul says, be honest in your evaluation of yourselves, measuring yourselves by the faith that God has given us. So a lot of times what we do is we measure our life by the other people that we pick out that we think are worse than us. Paul says don't do that. If you're going to measure your life against Jesus. Just as our bodies have many parts and each part has a special function, so it is with Christ's body, the church. We are many parts of one body. We're the church, and we all belong to each other. I find it very compelling right here in these verses that Paul says that the key to honest self-evaluation, the key to honestly investigating your heart, and the key to making honest changes on the inside of you that are very genuine and eventually show up on the outside is this, and remember this today: don't think that you're better than you really are. That's the first step. That's the first key to honestly evaluating your heart, self-investigation, and making necessary changes that you need to make on the inside. Don't think that you're better than you really are. Why? Because it's very difficult to make honest changes and honest evaluations in your life if you think that you don't need them. If you think that you're better than you really are, if you think that your integrity is better than it really is, if you think that your character, if you think that your faith, if you think that your patience, if you think that your relationships, if you think the way that you treat others is better than it really is, then you're going to have a hard time making very significant and positive changes in your life. And chances are, if you do live this way, then you won't be very honest with yourself either. And if you're not honest with yourself, then chances are you're not going to do a very honest self-evaluation of what needs to change in your life. So the first step is this: don't think too highly of yourself, your faith, your character, your strength. Don't think that you're better than you really are. And then God calls all of us to evaluate our life and our heart because we belong to each other as God's church. So that's what Paul said. The reason why we have to do this is because we all belong to each other. We're all brothers and sisters, and so we all have to be there for each other. And it's very difficult for all of us to serve the world together and to love other people together and to worship together and to love God together and to go make the world a better place together if we're all covering something up, if we're all hiding what's really in our hearts, if we don't make honest self-evaluations of what we're holding on to on the inside that we need to let go of, then we're never really going to become the light of the world and the salt of the earth together and make a difference together. So not only will this affect us as individuals, we have to make honest evaluations of our heart, but we also have to do this together as the church so the church can stay together and serve the world. And then Jesus said it like this one time, and I really love this passage. He says this in Matthew chapter 23, verses 25 through 26. What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites. That word hypocrite meant an actor in a theater, someone who's just playing a role, someone who just dresses up on the outside. They're an actor in a theater. They're just playing a role. He says, you're hypocrites, for you're so careful to clean the outside of the cup or the dish or the bowl, but inside you're filthy, full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first wash the inside of the cup or the bowl and the dish, and then the outside will become clean too. And so notice how Jesus gets to the heart of these issues right here by talking about the condition of our heart. Let me say that again. Jesus gets to the heart of my issue and your issue by going directly and mainly and primarily to the condition of our heart. And this is what he says about the religious leaders back then. He goes, your outside looks like a very beautiful dish, a clean bowl. But if you look inside, it's just full of filth. This is my dog Tank leftover food. So Tank ate his food this morning, but this is what he left over. By the way, never get Alpo confused with taco meat. It doesn't go well. But a lot of times, this is what our life looks like as religious people. On the outside, what we show people, the only thing that we let people see, looks really good, really clean, really strong. But if you peek into our heart, full of Alpo, full of dog food. And so Jesus says this, first work on the inside. Don't first work on your outside. Don't work on your image first. Don't work on your reputation first. Don't work on the outside and what other people see first. If you really want to be a genuine and honest person, work on the inside first. Clean the inside of the cup, and then the outside of the dish will be beautiful too. And in this passage in Matthew chapter 23, Jesus is talking to some very rigid, some very prude, and some very strict religious leaders, and he calls them fake. And the reason why he calls them fake is because of this. And remember this today. Again, if you're still with me in your living rooms, say, I'm still with you. He says this, they overestimated their own goodness, and they underestimated the goodness of those they disagreed with. And so this is why Jesus called the religious leaders hypocrites and fake, because they overestimated their own character. They overestimated their own faith and their own goodness. They thought too highly of themselves. And then they underestimated those that they didn't like, those they didn't agree with, those that they didn't get along with. And so they underestimated those that they were called to love. And so because of that, they fell into this constant pattern of only monitoring and filtering their outside life and actions without dealing with the inside. And so on the outside, they made sure to make themselves look holy. On the outside, they made sure to make themselves look clean and look religious and look godly and look good. But on the inside, in their heart, there was greed, selfishness, jealousy, pride, and secrets. That's what Jesus said. And many times, you and I do the same thing. We usually overestimate our own goodness. We usually overestimate our own character, our own faith, our own treatment of others, and we underestimate the goodness and the hearts of those people that we don't like, that we don't get along with, that we don't agree with, that we have divisions with and tensions with. You can see this online today. You can see this on Facebook. Go to KPLC's Facebook or Concerned Citizens of Moss Bluff or Sulphur or Lake Charles or whatever, and you can see there's a lot of people today that overestimate their own opinions. They overestimate their own hearts. They overestimate their own goodness. They overestimate their own opinions, and they underestimate the opinions and the hearts and the sincerity and the love of those people that they don't like and that they disagree with. And so what happens is a lot of division and a lot of tension, and people don't come together. Also, you and I have gotten really, really good at only showing other people in our life the behaviors and the choices and the actions that we want them to see and that we want them to know about. And we filter out all of the actions and all of the choices that we don't want them to see. And so we show them this outside image like we're an actor in the theater. But on the inside, what really needs an honest evaluation is our heart. What really needs to be monitored is the inside, our soul, our desires, our motives, our heart. With our life on the inside, we can be dealing with difficulties, weaknesses, fear. But on the outside, we hide all of those personal struggles and we filter them out of our public image and out of our public behaviors, and we act like we're carefree and we act like life is just going great. And we act like our faith is strong, and we act like we're not weak at all, but on the inside, you don't feel that way at all. And so something we all need to understand today is this: you and I work really hard to only show people what we want them to see about our life and what we want them to know about our life. You've heard me say that so many times. You and I focus and we work really hard to monitor and to filter our outward appearance, our outward life, our outward actions. We work so hard to create this outward image, and that's the only version of us that we allow other people to see. And many times that's the only thing that we work on. The only thing that we really work on is what we want other people to see. But like we talked about last week, and today we need to understand this, that Jesus called all of us to take it one step further. Don't just polish your outside. Don't just work on your outside. You know, one dangerous teaching that we've heard in churches for so long, our entire life, is this: be careful what you do, be careful what you say, be careful where you go so you can protect your testimony. You want to protect your testimony. And so you have to be careful what you do. And if you think something's questionable, don't do it in case someone else sees you, and that could damage your testimony. And so what we did in our churches as we told people that is we gave them the impression that the one main thing they needed to work on is what other people saw. I need to be careful what I let other people see me say or do because I don't want to damage my testimony. So as a result, we got so used to just working on what other people see. But Jesus says, no, no, no. If you really want to build a story about your life, you just need to have a good heart. And so you have to take it one step further and don't just work on your outside, but work on your heart. You and I all, to some degree, monitor our behavior, our image, our reputation, and our actions in front of other people, all because we stay more concerned with how other people see us. We stay more concerned with how other people view us, how they feel about us, and what they say about us. We've gotten so used to hiding those parts of us that we don't want others to judge, that we don't want others to criticize, that we don't want others to point the finger at us, those parts of us that make us feel guilty and unproductive in life, those parts of us that are selfish. We've gotten so good at hiding those parts, all because we want acceptance, validation, attention, and affirmation from the other people around us in our life. But in our attempt to get all of that from the other people around us, we fail to live an honest life. And we fail to live a transparent life. And we fail to live a life where we monitor our heart first, which is always the real reason behind why we do what we do. The real reason behind why you do what you do is not because of your outside stress. It's not because you drank too much alcohol one night. It's not because of anxiety and fear. It's just getting the best of you. The reason why you do what you do all the time is because that's what's in your heart. And so again, don't just focus on the outside. Get this mess out of your life, out of your heart, and then you won't have to work so hard to polish this all the time. And so the purpose of this message today is this. It's to get us to go one step further and to honestly evaluate what's going on in our heart on the inside. Now, anytime that we're challenged to do that, fear always sets in and it paralyzes us, because that is what fear does. Fear always paralyzes us, it freezes us, and it consumes us internally until we can reach a point in our life where we get tired of being controlled by it, and then we have to face it and deal with it. So you and I can have all of these toxic emotions that fight for the control of our heart. And when we let those toxic emotions and feelings gain control of our heart, then it usually comes out on the outside. And then we just start trying to clean up the outside when the real issue begins in the heart. Toxic emotions like guilt, envy, anger. These are issues that we all need to tackle, not on the outside, but on the inside. And one emotion that's always trying to get the best of us, one emotion that's always trying to defeat us, is the emotion of fear. And I don't know about you, but going through this time right now that we're all going through, it's a scary time. It's a fearful time. For many people, the future is uncertain. And so very quickly, I just wanted to talk to you today about how to handle fear as we go through this time. And so our own personal fear is a very toxic emotion. So here's just a few things today to keep in mind about fear. Number one, all of us walk through life with fear. Big fears, smaller fears, irrational fears, legitimate fears, fears that produce very unhealthy habits. Fear is something every person listening to this message today has in common. So, because we're all part of God's family and we all have this fear in common, then we all need to work together, look at me right now and understand this. Don't add to the fear of the other people in your life. If you're doing something that's adding to the other people in your life, it's adding to their fear, stop it. We're all a part of one body. We're all a part of one family. We should all be helping each other overcome our fears instead of adding to each other's fears. The second thing is this. Fear is not always a bad thing. Our fear is actually created, and it's a byproduct of a very good gift and a very good ability that God has given all of us. And God has given all of us the ability to dream and to focus and to create and to think. Our imagination can be our greatest weapon, or it can be our greatest enemy. And so God gives us this good ability to think and focus and plan and dream, especially for the future. And many times as we start to think and to focus and to dream about the future, sometimes our mind gets the best of us and fear takes over instead of hope. Fear takes over instead of optimism. Fear takes over instead of joy, because we're using this God-given ability and we're starting to abuse it, because now we're letting this beautiful imagination that God has given us drift off into the what-ifs. It drifts off into the uncertains, these things that hasn't even happened yet. 99% of the things we fear won't even come true, but we let this beautiful gift of dreaming and this beautiful gift of an imagination sometimes go way too far, and it leads us to fear. And so a lot of times, we have to take this God-given ability and use it in a healthy way. And sometimes it's good to have a little bit of fear in our life. Sometimes a healthy caution and a healthy fear is very good for us. And I'll give you some examples. Some people rarely or they never abuse drugs or alcohol. Why? Some people rarely or they never make harmful and careless relationship decisions or sexual decisions. Why? Some people are rarely or never careless with their money. Some people are rarely and never careless with their education decisions or their health decisions or whatever it is. Why? Because they're afraid of what may happen if they do give into those things. And so there's this healthy caution and this healthy fear. And so our ability to imagine future possibilities can create a healthy caution and a healthy fear in us that can actually protect our life today and in the future. So not all fear is bad. So we all deal with fear because we all have the good ability to think. We all deal with fear because we all have the good ability to dream and to focus and to imagine. The bad things that could happen in our lives, sometimes we fear those things, and so we have to take precautions. I tell my boys all the time, and you've heard me say this before, if you're around your friends and they're doing something and they're trying to get you to do something and immediately you have that fear on the inside of you, don't do it. Get away from that situation. Just because everyone else is cutting backflips off your friend's roof into the shallow part of the pool in the backyard and they think it's fun and wild and crazy, doesn't mean you got to do it too. Okay? So if you're with your friends and they're doing something that seems a little bit scary, that's a very healthy thing that can protect you. Use your ability to think. Use your ability to imagine. Use your ability to see down the road, to be creative and see down the road. And sometimes if you see that your life is heading down the wrong road, then sometimes a healthy fear can set in. And so listen to that and pay attention to it. But the third thing is this, and this is so key. You and I can take fear too far very quickly. So we all have this ability to imagine and to think and to dream about the future. Sometimes that's very beneficial because it can protect us like we just talked about. But at other times we let our mind, and this is so important, at other times we let our thoughts and our imagination go way too far, and it leads us to fear too much. Our imagination, again, can be our greatest weapon or our greatest enemy. Now remember this today. Remember this point. It becomes our greatest enemy when we allow our thoughts to become worries. Then our worries become stress. Then our stress becomes anxiety. Then our anxiety becomes fear. Then our fear becomes irrational. And then our mind becomes exhausted. Let me say that again so you can see the anatomy of exhaustion. The anatomy of this internal just being tired and being exhausted on the inside. Let me tell you how that all begins. So again, remember this. Our imagination and our fear becomes our greatest enemy when we allow our thoughts to become worries, our worries to become stress, our stress becomes anxiety, our anxiety becomes fear, and our fear becomes irrational. and then our mind becomes exhausted. And now after that, our heart is dominated by being afraid. Most of the time by things that hasn't even happened yet or never will. The truth is this: living with too much worry and too much fear will make you self-absorbed, constantly distracted. It'll make you selfish, overly nervous, overly protective. We can all take our fear too far, too quickly. Notice how Jesus calls us to deal with our fear today. 1 John chapter 4, verse 18, again, out of the New Living Translation. Such love has no fear, because perfect love expels all fear. If we're afraid, it's for fear of punishment. And this shows that we have not fully experienced his perfect love. Jesus is always seeking after us, but not to instill fear in our hearts, but so that we can experience him and experience his love in the most perfect way. And when you truly experience God, and when you truly experience his love, then that experience starts to drive out and cast out your fear. When following Jesus is at the core of your soul and who you are, even when your life is full of fear, you can rise above it, because now there's strength there because of Jesus that wasn't there before. Now there's faith there because of Jesus that wasn't there before. Now there's discernment there because of Jesus that wasn't there before. Now there's fight there because of Jesus that wasn't there before. And even those storms, all those storms in your life right now that's causing all that fear and all of that uncertainty, when we follow Jesus, even Jesus has ultimate power over those storms. When I first started speaking publicly, I started to preach revivals all over the state of Louisiana. If you can name me a little town or a little city in Louisiana, I've probably preached there. I've preached in Shreveport, Alexandria, Hicks, Simpson, Pine Prairie. I've preached all over little places in Toledo Bend. I've preached in Toro Hills. I've preached in all these kind of places, Starks, all these kind of places. And I remember several years ago, I was up in North Louisiana and I was preaching at a revival. And during the invitation time, a young man about 15 years old walked up to me. He walked up to us as we were praying and counseling. And he wanted to talk to me, so we sat down and talked, and he was just weeping. And he said that he was full of fear and that he really needed to give his life to Jesus because he just didn't know how to hold on. And I asked him what was going on in his life, and this is what he said. His dad was in prison because his dad had gotten like his 6th DUI. So he was in prison for like 10 years. And then right after his dad went to prison, his mom, who was hooked on drugs, she got married to her drug dealer, and he was also hooked on drugs. And so because of that, this young 15-year-old boy had to go live with his grandfather. Shortly after he moved in with his grandfather started to pass away from congestive heart failure. And as he was praying with us that night after that service, he was just weeping, saying, "I'm so afraid. I'm so scared. I don't know what the future holds. It's so uncertain. I don't know how I'm going to survive. I don't know how I'm going to make it through this. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm just so scared. I'm just so afraid." That night we prayed with him, and he wanted to give his life to Jesus, and that church just followed up with him over and over and over again. And he did give his life to Jesus that night. Let me just say this before I finish the story. I feel like some of you are probably dealing with that same type of fear right now in your soul. What's going to happen? What's going to happen to our jobs? What's going to happen to our family? What's going to happen to our retirement? What's going to happen to our security? When is this ever going to go back to normal? What's going to happen? What's going to happen to our careers? What's going to happen to our livelihoods? What's going to happen to our health? What's going to happen to our churches? What's going to happen? And I would just tell you this: none of us knows. We really don't. But there's one thing we should know, is that Jesus will never walk away from us. He'll never leave us. He'll never abandon us. And like we've seen so many times before in the text, even when there's a storm, he can calm our hearts in the middle of the storm. So that young man that night gave his life to Jesus. About 9 years ago, I went to a leadership conference. After one of the big main sessions, I went to a breakout session. And guess who was leading that breakout session at this big leadership conference? It was that young man who had given his heart to Jesus when he was 15 years old, just 9 years earlier. So after the session, I caught up with him, and he remembered me. And I said, "Man, what have you been doing? I mean, it looks like your life is really doing great." He goes, "Well, a few years ago, I moved to Monroe, and I started a church. I started a ministry, and it's going awesome. It's going great." He goes, "And Jesus has really held on to my life, and he helped me make it through those difficult times." Let me just say this. In this life, when the storms are raging, and everything feels uncertain, you and I have no control. But we follow the one who has complete control, and that's Jesus Christ. So this week, I just want to challenge you. Don't just focus on the outside. Don't just play that game of monitoring your outside and filtering your outside just so you can show what you want people to see. Take it one step further. Focus on what's inside. Focus on your heart. I think I just dropped some dog food on my shoe. But also, spend some time seeking Jesus, because perfect love will cast out our fear. And the way we know that perfect love is we have very personal and real experiences with Jesus Christ himself. I hope this has helped you out today. I hope you've got something out of it. If so, like it and share it. And we look forward to seeing you Sunday morning. We love you. Have a great rest of your week. Thank you so much for tuning in.
We want to thank you so much for joining us for today's midweek message. If this message spoke to you, or if you have a prayer request, make sure you drop that in the comments down below. We'd love to hear about it. If you want to further partner with the church, there's 3 simple ways to do so. The first way is you can give online. You can visit watersedgegathering.com and click on giving. From there, you'll be led to eGive, our online giving platform. Or you can text to give. You can text the word give to 337-223-9003. From there, you can enter your dollar amount, and then you'll be led to on-screen instructions. Or you can simply give through the mail. You can do so by mailing Water's Edge Gathering, P.O. Box 572, Lake Charles, Louisiana 70602, or Water's Edge Gathering, 2760 Power Center Parkway, Lake Charles, Louisiana 70607. We cannot wait to join up with you guys for this Sunday's online experience. We hope you guys have a great week. Thank you so much for joining us for today.